Okay.
If I sit here, I'm going,
You're used to that perspective.
I've always been here, so now I'm like, oh yeah, I don't like to sit there.
You need to come up this.
I can sit next to Russ.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee Thursday, March 15th, 2012 to order. The next item is the approval of the February 16th committee minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I guess I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Aye. Item 3 is the consideration of the Southern Sun as manager of small equities from the pension plan.
At the last pension meeting, we interviewed, the pension committee interviewed 3 finalists to take the place of a previous manager that we had. And the selection of this particular manager, who incidentally is a Tennessee business, was carried on a 4-0 vote. In my memo, I said that it was overwhelmingly passed. I would have said unanimously passed, except we had one member of the committee who already does business with this company, and she recused herself. So this is a highly recommended company. Their numbers were very good, and we would recommend that you approve this and send it to the board to finalize the contract.
Is there a motion to send this to the board?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Then item 4 is the
Got it in just before 4.
update on appropriations to nonprofit and governmental organizations.
summary.
And
Good.
that's,
That's good.
we're being sent around to us.
Yeah, we've got what we do currently.
The next item that we wanted to bring back to you started out as a question, and that is, does this committee or the board have any interest in adding additional nonprofits to the appropriation? We have gotten a couple of calls from outside interest. They have not made an application yet. We told them we did not know exactly what the process would be, but for each of the last 6 years, I believe, we have not added anyone to this because of the economic situation. We have not attempted to do anything because we were actually cutting back on the existing recipients. But we would like some guidance on whether or not you want us to continue to say no to these people who are asking. And to help you make that determination, we've given you a list now through today of the requests that we have gotten in from the nonprofits that were on our list last year. If you'll note, there's a little sticky note at the bottom that says these are the 5 people that we have not heard back from yet. The actual deadline, by the way, is April 6th, so
They're not late yet.
they're not late. The one that's chopped off at the bottom is Second Harvest Food Bank, and I apologize for that. You can see a couple of the letters, but not all of them.
That doesn't mean they're not.
That doesn't mean that they will not apply, and I'm sure that the Tennessee Rehab Center and Franklin Tomorrow will.
Well, just as a review of where we've been, and maybe help Alderman Blanton too, because wasn't here for some of this. We've been through the change in the allocation process, to which last year we moved to the board just deciding what they wanted to do. For a few years before that, a number of years before that, we used the United Way to give us a recommendation about the allocation of dollars among these groups. And essentially what's happened the last couple of years is we wanted to treat these outside agencies similar to how we were treating our own departments. So if we were reducing departments, it didn't make sense to not impact these departments or these areas as well. So we did some similar across-the-board reductions is essentially how it worked out the first couple years, probably fiscal 9 and 10. Last year, I think we held everybody stable. We didn't go up, we didn't go down, we just held the same funding. And as Russ alluded to, for the last several years, the indication and direction from the board has been, let's just stay with this group. There's sort of a history or legacy of funding these groups and functions, and let's just kind of hold the line with those. So we're just looking for some guidance or direction on how you want to handle this, both from a process standpoint with the existing funded agencies and where we go with that, and realize some of that will be driven by overall budget considerations. But then also, what do we do with any other new potential requests and entities that are looking for this funding?
Well, Brandy's not been subjected to my mantra since 2006. So for your,
Go for it. What is it?
I'll have to subject you to it. First of all, and it's like a broken record, but it's not the jurisdiction, again, of city government to give money to nonprofits. That's not the role of government. Do I support these organizations? Do I think they're an integral part of our community? Absolutely. Do I think they're worthy of being supported? Absolutely. But by the private sector, by individual citizens. I've had countless people call me over and over and say, why do you choose to give certain organizations who are very worthy, not debatable? These issues are not debatable, but these people don't do great things for our community. They're worthy of money, they're worthy of our support and all that stuff. But why do we continuously pick and choose nonprofits to give our tax dollars for? So we are picking and choosing for all our constituents, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Edelweiss, so you name it. We are picking and choosing the organizations to give our constituents tax dollars to. And that's where it comes in. It is not the jurisdiction of government to be doing this. I mean, I'm the first one, along with everybody at this table, especially Brandy and her organization, her company, have done great things for this city and the organizations, and that is not the debate at all. But the debate is why we should be doing this from a governmental perspective and giving tax dollars from individuals in our city to these organizations, and picking and choosing which ones we would do that. This needs to come from the individual taxpayers, from organizations such as Southern Exposure and different places that go out and do all these great things to raise money. And so I will say that again this year because my constituents continuously tell me this is not the jurisdiction, and I totally agree. It's not the jurisdiction of government to do it. So therefore, I say let's not add any more to it. My goal would be to eventually reduce this budget by 10% every year and do away with the list from city government. And as aldermen, as people in the city, we should be out there encouraging the citizens and organizations and companies to give to these organizations, get involved, go to the fundraisers, do all we can. We all volunteer. I know all of us volunteer for a lot of these organizations. I know a lot of us are on boards of these organizations. Again, that is not the issue. The issue is the jurisdiction of government, over and over. I can't say it enough. So I say we don't add anyone to this. I say every year we reduce it by 10% and start phasing out, because I don't think it's fair to pull the plug on these organizations. It's not right, because we've been doing this. So we need to phase it out over the time. I have many friends that are in these organizations, lots of friends that run these organizations, and you know, it's a difficult thing for me to even say this, but it's the right thing. And so that's my stance. I'm going to stay with that. I hear that consistently from my people that I represent as well. And I would recommend lowering it by 10% again this year.
My turn? Wow, Beth, I haven't heard that before. And I understand where you're coming from. No, it's all good. I haven't had a chance to talk to one constituent about how they feel about this, but leading from my heart and my place of life, I do a lot of nonprofit work. In fact, that's what I do most that fills me up, is being able to help support a lot of these people. And I'll go biblical on you, and that might be wrong, but I think we can't be good stewards of our money if we're not giving back to the community. And I think, you call it a tithe, call it whatever, but these people help our citizens. And I understand you're saying jurisdiction, but my gut tells me that this is the right thing. And if nobody else is shouting from the rooftops that they don't agree, and maybe let them come here and speak to that if we have it as a situation where they can. But my heart goes the total opposite way, and that's no offense to you,
Oh, no.
but I think this is probably one of the best things we can do as a city, is give back to the people that don't work for profit, that help our own, whether it's domestic, I'm getting upset, whether it's, the Boys and Girls Club or domestic violence, or, and I could name names, but this is probably the most right thing I think we can do. So I'm on the
Yeah.
total opposite side of the fence, nothing personally.
Oh, absolutely.
And if people feel different, let me know, but that's my gut. And that's all I have to go with,
And-
because I just got this piece of paper for the first time.
I would like to add one thing, just to clarify. That's the issue that we always come back to on this board, the heartstrings. And that's not the issue. The issue is not heartstrings. I'll be the first one on the front line with heartstrings. And Brandy would be too. But, and I don't see any of us that would not. But it's not a heart issue. It's a government issue. It's not a tithing issue. It's not a religion issue. It is a government issue of taking people's money to give to private, nonprofit organizations, and we are making the choice of where your money should go to support what organizations.
Okay,
And
debate that with
whatever.
the library,
Yeah.
though.
But I just, no,
Well, that's just-
because then you
we're
get
gonna
in.
get a motion.
Yeah, but then you get into, and it shouldn't be void of motion. This is where we get in trouble. But then you talk about library,
need to be.
you talk about county, and that's where it's very difficult for me too, because you have to separate that in this job. And I think the county library, the county health department, the chamber, those are entities that do for this, that's a whole different ballgame too in my book. But I just wanted to clarify that, because I could be right there with everybody else on the heart issue, but that's not the issue.
See, I think we had a comment over here, go ahead.
Yep. I recognize the position that Alderman Berger's had for years now. And yes, it is a philosophy, but actually the policy of this board for the last 6 years has been to contribute to these agencies. I wish that we could consider expanding, but it looks like our revenue stream is going to increase very little this year, and I don't think this is the time that we should consider adding more names onto the list. I would encourage these other agencies to again contact us before budget time next year, so we can see what our revenue projections are by then. But I move that we just accept the current list of agencies that we have helped in the past and proceed from there.
So the motion would be to accept the agencies that we have funded in the past. Is there a second to that motion?
And clarification,
Yeah, thanks.
just accepting them, that's the question before this board right now. Just if we want to add, or just accept this list and then debate this
Does
list.
that include the sticky note?
including the sticky note.
Well, now,
Yeah.
they have until April.
And the ones that are on the
Yeah.
sticky note are on the list already, I think, right? There's not anybody.
It's not.
You will be seeing and potentially
we're on that.
debating
Other-
the budget that
Yeah.
goes with this a month from now.
Okay.
What we need to know is what to tell new applicants.
Yeah.
Are they,
Oh, yeah.
can they apply, or
Oh.
should we go ahead and give them the courtesy of telling them no right now?
I'll second Alderman Skinner's motion.
That we
Yeah.
keep the list that we have now.
Yes, my intention was not to add any more and to encourage them to,
Sure. I'll
this
second-
time
I'll
next
second
year,
that.
maybe to contact us.
So these groups on the sticky note currently get funding, we just haven't heard back
We just
from our
haven't gotten
request.
their
Yeah.
application.
They're on
So
the
they would
list.
be included in Alderman Skinner's
They've been
motion?
contacted.
They're on the original
Agencies
list.
that we
Yeah,
had helped.
yeah, they're on the
Last
base,
year.
in the base,
What
if
you're
you think of
saying,
it from
they're
a
on the
budget
original
standpoint.
list.
So you'll
Yes.
know, when we made the change last year, we not only get a letter from them asking for a certain amount,
Yeah.
we have to get their financial statements,
It's a
we
whole
have to do
shebang.
all the things that used to be done by someone else in the past. So we're waiting to get their packet in that includes their request.
That's part of the request process, is all the background and documentation. One other thing I want to just point out, just so everybody knows, that the animal control component is the one component that has escalated the last couple years, while others haven't, because it's contractual. We have a contractual agreement for the animal control services with the county. So that's one that's a little bit different, because it's really sort of an intergovernmental services agreement, if you will.
So that really
Two
might
go-
not
three
need to be on
governments.
here.
If
it's on the
It keeps
contract.
getting listed with this, but it's really kind
Really
of,
not.
excuse the pun, a different animal.
See, different,
It really doesn't break it down into governmental and
Can we take
A
a
horse of a different color.
I think in the government.
we break it down into the different
Stop.
categories.
That's right.
This list just added.
Well, aren't they actually in the budget somewhere else?
We have a group,
So why are they on
Well,
this
it's
list?
economic development. This is under, it's all under appropriations.
yeah, there's an appropriation
Oh, so
that is
they
part of
can-
that. Yeah,
That's why they're,
that's why it's on that list.
because I was going to
it's in
say
that group
government,
of
and
the
then you've
budget.
got health department, you've got
Aren't
libraries,
most of the
government.
others 501c3s?
Yes.
And
They
animal
have to be
control is not.
501c3s.
So we should treat it that way, that they should be,
We should really.
But for
separate
right
that.
now, though, we're saying,
right.
that the motion is that we continue with the
The list.
group that we had last year.
yes.
With
That
the
is the
list.
motion.
Yeah, and I guess part of what we'll come forward with in the recommended budget will be a general recommendation about how to treat any additional funding or the funding level of this group.
Later.
Are you comfortable with us kind of working through that and giving you that as a staff recommendation like we do with departmental budgets? And then that could be something you review in your budget review and consideration process, or how do you want us to handle
Oh, like-
the funding
Okay, well,
level
shall-
question?
Shall we go ahead and?
Maybe
vote
deal with
on-
that and then come back to that.
On the motion as it is,
Yes.
that we keep the same list. Did you want to say anything
I
about
just
that?
want to say that I would hate to think that we stopped taking care of our people. That's one thing that makes Franklin so special. We're not any place USA. When people come to this town, they know there's a difference. They know that we do have a heart, and there's nothing wrong with government having a heart. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, if it doesn't, I don't want any part of it.
Amen.
And so I appreciate what the city does, and I think every one of my constituents would agree with this, that we contribute and take care of our own. And if you have visited these places like Waves and seen what they need a bathroom terribly in one of their facilities.
Amazing place.
You know, it's amazing how they get along with what little they get from us in little bits and pieces around. I think they do a beautiful job, and I would hate to see us cut this out, one dime of it, one dime. And if we can add more, praise the Lord. But if we can't, we need to take care of what we've got.
Okay, let's vote on the motion to keep the list the same.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to vote on that? All in favor of keeping the same list from last year, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
I'm still just confused.
Okay. So far, we're saying that we're not
I
going to
know, but
add or
who else
subtract
wants in,
any.
I guess is the question, you know what I mean? And that's, we just don't have the money.
No, budget.
Right.
Budget's
Well,
not there.
let me give you one other
Thank you,
bit of
I'm sorry.
information. No. Since we did have our other departments, you know, our funded governmental departments have to cut their budgets by some percentages over the last, I would say, 3 years? Then we did not feel that we could continue to support these at the same level and not cut their money when we were asking everybody else in the city, every city department to cut its money. So we did that a couple of times, but then some of the cuts were not applied evenly one year, and we didn't realize it until after it had already happened. And so
We went back and fixed
so
that.
what we went back and fixed it. So what we did then most recently is keep the same level, and if we had to make cuts, we said we need to apply exactly. But I believe, was it last year, we did not?
I think we just froze it last year.
We froze it last year. what
Year before, it was a reduction of 10%.
Yeah, something like
Last year it was
5%, I think,
frozen.
maybe, something like that.
Okay.
I'm
So
trying to remember the
those
exact
are-
percentage.
And I don't know
Thought it was
whether we're
5, but I
thinking,
could be
but it's
wrong.
our general, I want to know, is the general consensus that we would kind of go with it frozen this year, or smaller or larger? Right now, I haven't seen the budget, the revenue projections yet that would make me think anything else. But if we do have some extra money, then there might be a decision to be made. Should we add other agencies, or should we add
That's
money
what I'm
to
wondering, because I know
these?
sales tax is coming in higher than we expected, and wherever that gets divvied up, does part of it go to this?
Well,
Or do we
it's all
wanna
general
wait till-
fund funded, if you will, so
Right.
it is part of that mix. The other thing to consider is our property tax isn't producing exactly what we planned on because of
Okay.
how the reassessment process worked, and then the subsequent appeal process that happens. We set a rate prior to the appeal process, and the appeal process has a way of eroding that,
Okay.
that assumption a little bit. So that offsets some of the good news in sales tax, although it is performing better, and we got pretty good news just a day or two ago on the March numbers. So that is doing better. There's not going to be a huge jump, but that is something we're working through ourselves in terms of projections, et cetera. If you had a 3% increase, that's $9,000 in this group, roughly. This is around $300,000 of funding, $53,000 of which is a contractual obligation on animal control. So if you think of it that way, the pie, even if it grows somewhere around 2 or 3%, which is probably a realistic number, I would guess, is not huge. So that's just something for you to consider. It's probably not even $10,000 potentially if we did a similar increase. So how do you want to handle that with folks that you gave some reductions to in the last 3 years? How much do you restore? How much do you add somebody new? That's where I guess
Would we want
some
to
guidance might be
then,
helpful.
would we want to then maybe wait and see what the revenue projections and what and how this fits into our other departments before we decide anything like that? In other words, just saying that we've just voted to recommend keeping the same list, but as far as the money allotted to them, should that wait until we see how much money we have? Or I'm asking the
Yeah,
I'd be more
committee.
comfortable If we got a little deeper into the budget.
And would it matter that much to the staff working on this to just say, let's kind of keep this as our guideline, and then we'll go from there when we see how the other...
Do most of these agencies work on a July through June, or do they calendar year?
It varies.
They're used to our process in terms of when we decide and how our budget works, so as long as we're kind of moving along the way we normally do in certain terms of budget consideration and your decision-making, which happens between now and July 1, I don't think that's going to be too burdensome on them. By May 1 or so, our recommended budget from staff comes out to you, my recommended budget as administrator comes to you. That'll include a starting point on this as well.
I just don't want to shut the door on somebody if we can eke out, if, say, another $9,000, you look at some of these get less than that. That could be divvied up against two new, very, worthy nonprofits. So that's why I don't know how to vote, because I don't know where the numbers are going to lie.
Well, and you've got to remember, this is a piece of a very big process.
Yeah, I'm learning
too.
that.
Yeah.
Take it as it comes.
See, we used to have United Way. We'd tell United
would do
Way,
it.
here's X amount of dollars,
They divvy it up.
and
I don't
They
put up
kind
with
of-
that.
No, but
Yeah, we
what
quit
we
that
found
last
out
year.
is that we thought that when we cut them back by 10%, that they were cutting every
Across the
one of the
board.
agencies across the board by
Got it.
10%. And it turned out
They
that
did
they
not
did
do
not do
that.
that.
And then we took it back.
Yeah.
Then then you balanced it with everybody, so
Right,
everybody got
exactly.
treated
Yeah.
the same
But
in terms of reductions.
what we don't want to do is go back to, like, in 2006, we had all the hearings, and all these people would come in, and you don't want to sit here and listen to all these. This is why we need to go through the city and have them do the application, and then just take a look at this budget, and and pretty much, set the budget if you're going to do that. The other thing I'd like to ask is, can we not see about taking a couple of these out and doing some kind of grant process through the city? Because we have some, especially bridges, and I don't know if we have any other ones, Russ, you can let me know, that were reciprocal organizations. They reciprocate services for the city. So to me, I don't think they should even be on this list if they're reciprocating services. In other words, we've got, I'd like to see for bridges, and this is the one that I know that we work with all the time. I want to see numbers. How many pickups are police assisted? I mean, every time they go out to do pickups, they have to have police assistance. How many, so when they pick the children, the women up, if they pick them up, they're assisted by the police, and they take them and they house them. So if they weren't there, we would be paying out of our pocket. This would be a city service. We'd have to house these women and children. We'd have to go pick them up anyway. That's a reciprocal service. So I don't even know what they're doing in this. I think they should be somewhere else, and I think there's one or two other ones that
With
reciprocate.
Bridges is unique because they also they're a grant recipient for
Exactly.
emergency shelter grant dollars, which is
Exactly.
outside of
That's what
this.
that is. That's not what this is.
Yeah, that's a
So
separate
sometimes
deal.
I just don't understand why they're on this list, and also, they get $15,000. Do they need that, or do they need 10, or do they need 20 or 30 because of the reciprocal services? I don't know that unless I know the numbers of how many pickup and police assistance they've done. I mean, it may be this long, or it may be this long. I don't know, and so.
Are you talking about going back to what you had
Sounds like-
before?
No, I'm saying.
know you are.
No, I'm saying, no, because I've heard that, I have heard that.
I know.
I think that you take out bridges and any other that is a reciprocal service that we would have to have, because we have to have that. That's something the city has to provide.
Take it out and put it where?
Yeah, on the general budget somewhere.
There's
somewhere.
already a separate contract to do what you're talking about.
I mean, Russ would have to
Emergency
figure out where that
shelter
The
grant.
goes.
emergency shelter.
Yeah, we have that grant.
The reason that we
That's
put all
not
these
part of this.
together is because, again, this is something that the state prescribes how we're supposed to adopt these.
Right,
Because-
because of the, yeah. So they really have to stay in there, is what you're telling me?
Yes, but we'll break the groups into whether they're governmental or civic, or whether they're.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do it that way.
Sure.
I don't know what an
Yeah.
ombudsman is.
Because we've got health department, you've got the library, you've got the chamber, so you've got government entities here, you've got chamber economic development, and then you've got bridges with that service. And then you have animal control.
So,
They're
what
different.
is the
I
direction?
know, we spent a lot more time on this because of me, and I'm sorry, but
That's right.
But what, our vote has just been that we'd keep the same list.
Yeah, but
And that was,
is that unanimous or what?
Oh,
it was,
shit.
how many
I think you had
ayes?
to vote on one.
Did you
You
vote?
can I do that?
One
can
abstention.
abstain, or you can vote no, or you can.
You
yeah.
can- yeah.
Because I want to see if we have more money and see what else we can cut.
Well,
Three
I think
and
the
one
next-
abstention. 3 yeses and 1 abstention.
Okay. Then I would move that we look at when the overall budget is submitted in May, so we'll know what employee raises are going to be and those kinds of things.
We do always highlight for you, and we can bring it to you, what we did or what we proposed in the budget related to these. And we'll do that again, so that, there'll be other opportunities to discuss where you want to go with this item as well.
And there are still some big unknowns that are involved in the budget. You know, we received today bids on health care for our employees for next year. We haven't opened up all the boxes yet with all of those bids. We don't know from the actuary what the pension contribution is going to be. There are some big numbers that are potentially out there that we're going to have to reconcile before we finalize.
Okay, are we ready to move on from this then?
Sure.
Is
Thank you.
it good enough direction to say that we're recommending that we keep the same list? Okay, let's see, item number 5 is the presentation from Planning and Building and Neighborhood Services.
Planning and
Is that first?
sustainability. Come on up, yeah. Here's, is this on? No, I think we'll do, planning will go first, and
Right, they're kind of in,
Are they-
because planning and sustainability would be the first
Yeah,
pack,
have-
the first part of the first pack here, and then we'll do the second part of it, I guess, which is building and neighborhood services. So planning and sustainability.
Good evening.
Catherine Powers, the director.
Basically, planning and sustainability is pretty much asking for a continuation budget. And Mike, do you click or?
Here's the clicker,
Aha,
whoever wants.
okay, you're clicking. All right. I can't talk and click. As you can see, that is our organizational chart. Last year, the engineers that we had in planning moved back to engineering, so that we will be down some staff, but we will also be asking for a part-time planning assistant. And that part-time planning assistant will do a number of things. We had the last submittal, our largest submittal in a long time, 21 items. Our historic preservation person is doing 6, 7, 8 items every month to take to historic preservation. We have grant opportunities that we would like to research more. That just kind of a jack of all trades, part-time. And if you want to click on the next item, looking at about $23,000 to do that, to have that planning assistant. And then, go ahead. That is
Salary only, no benefits.
That's salary only, no benefits. It'd be part-time.
The part-time's not gonna have, yeah.
And you may see in the next group, I've talked about major changes. There really aren't much. I mean, you know, those are the major changes that we're looking at. Reducing public relations a little bit because the city's special events have taken over the illumination. And, you know, reducing, and then increasing outbound shipping. You know, postage is going up all the time. As we get more applications, as we get more activity, we're going to need to do more mailings. And just asking for some additional money on that. And some money on printing and copying, just because we're killing our copy machine. We keep copying our zoning ordinances, and you know, we're really doing major damage to our copy machine. The more we change our zoning ordinance and recopy it over and over and over again, it's creating a problem for our machine. Some of the things that we're looking at this year, we will update another character area, which we've been doing for the last 3 years without consultants, and anticipate doing it again this year without consultants. We're looking at the West Harpeth character area. We know Matt Catcher is coming in, so some of those will be things that will be germane this year to looking at the land use plan. And then in the last couple of years, we've done more outreach. We've been in the schools doing Box City. We did 2 schools last year. We did some outreach to Williamson County School District in the last year or so. And we've done more workshops in historic preservation and building and battlefield commission. And we're looking at continuing that outreach effort so that we're really bringing the message of planning, historic preservation, sustainability to our residents and helping them out in areas of historic preservation. You okay? And then just kind of an idea of the accomplishments that we did last year, and kind of read those. And we'll go to the next one. More accomplishments. Then the last slide, here are some goals for next year. We're looking at continuing our process of changing the zoning ordinance to make it more clear, more user-friendly, and to take into consideration all of the things that really need to be done now that we've had some time to spend with it. I want to update the West Harpeth character area, as I indicated before. We want to continue to research ways to streamline the process for development applications while still being able to get all of the information that people need and that BOMA needs to make its decision. We want to publish our historic resources inventory that we've been working on for the last couple of years. Again, conduct at least 2 preservation outreach for the neighborhoods of the HPOs. Last year we did roofs. It was not real well attended. We hope it'll be better attended next year. We'll do more outreach to try to get that attendance, but it was a very, very good workshop for those people who did attend it. Obviously, we would want to research new opportunities to utilize solar power, and You know, we've had the community action plan and sustainability for a while. Many of those items have been done. Others that haven't been done may no longer be important to do. Want to bring the Sustainability Commission up to date and change some of the action plans so that we have new goals and criteria, and then just expand the things that we're doing into the schools.
Question on that. Publish the historic research inventory. Can you expand on that? What would it be included in that? Just all the historic buildings? Or
All of the
building
historic
area?
properties in the city of Franklin, their acreage, their type of design, you know, it's a complete inventory of all of our historic properties.
So we're just going to update that, or
We're going
just,
to
or
update.
do they have that?
We've been updating it. We're very close to finishing it this year. We want to get it published and out to the public for next
So
year.
this would be
Awesome.
better
Yeah.
than what we've had before.
Yes.
That'd be helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Skinner?
I have a question. I think we're going to have on the discussion in the next work session about the household survey.
Yes.
Yes.
You doing that again?
Well, we had discussed that.
Next work session's going to have
So
a...
where I'm going with this was, would the budget for that be in administration's budget, or would that fall within
That's
plan?
interesting.
Well, in the past, we've put it in the planning department budget. You know, I think it would depend on how we're assigning responsibility. Planning's taken the lead in bringing this forward to you in a couple weeks. So I think we'll see where that discussion goes, and that may be somewhat driven by what instrument you might be interested in. There are a couple different avenues we can go down with this, with the survey, and we'll see what the board's interest is, what our ability is to fund it in a budget, and see how we assign responsibility from there. Probably being whatever department takes the lead on it, but past has been planning.
That's been
Yeah.
interesting. That's interesting because we've always before had something that was tailored specifically for Franklin.
It had the last one had 113 questions, or 100,
Wait,
100 plus
120.
questions.
100-plus questions.
Which is a lot of questions.
It's a very large document. It had a 30% return
That's
rate,
right, which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic, given how
Need to
long it
spend
must have
And
taken to
pe-
fill
and
out.
people wrote comments in addition to answering the questions.
Make
Yes.
it better, even better.
So I guess my other question
Plus.
is, I think the last one was conducted before I was alderman, so was planning heavily
2006.
involved
Yes.
in tallying this?
And planning, I would anticipate that planning would continue to be heavily involved. We looked at, you know, the budget for that was about $39,000. That didn't include the part-time people that they had to bring in to compile all that information. So I hope to bring to you in the next couple of weeks something that gives, you know, some variation on that theme as well as that.
Okay, so this budget may be modified somewhat.
That budget
by
may be
whatever
modified,
decision.
but I don't know what it would be at that time.
This doesn't include it at this point, but that could be something that is put in the request and we would look at.
Interesting.
Okay.
There's some other comments or questions?
I
So,
have-
because we're just looking at this and holding it in abeyance. We're just accepting this.
I just had a
This is
couple
the
of quick
request. You have
questions.
it now.
Can you
What
refer
was
us
it?
to?
Yeah, page 1 on the Excel spreadsheet, under the budget. Let's see. So you were talking about item 82360 and public relations education. So we've moved that someplace, you said? You've moved some of that expense somewhere?
Yeah, the illumination is now going through
Yeah,
the
this-
city's special events.
So that is still in our budget, but it's moving to a different
Yes.
area.
Yeah, that's,
So it's out of your,
did I hear that is going to be part of administration?
Well, there's some
In a similar
discussion
manner.
about the responsibility of that whole item and the role that the commission wants to take and other
Well,
players in the community. So I
The
think
commission
that's
has already recommended that we do it December 2nd of this year.
to be
so-
determined, yeah,
So
exactly.
supplies have,
and we're not
I
the-
understand we have some, but we may need a little more, we may not need this much, but.
And that doesn't mean that some of the folks who've been involved in it in the past won't continue to have some role in that, too, working with the volunteer agencies.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
we've heard there's some real interest in some other groups outside of the city stepping up and taking more of a role, too. So
Right.
I think that's being explored.
We're probably not going to be there for this year.
Yeah,
It may be
yeah.
next year.
I just wanted to know, also, just a few real quick ones. Ground transportation went from 10,000, that's item, next page, 82820. Ground transportation, outside ways, it went from 10,000 down to 10,600 and 4,800? I mean, that's a big drop. Are we not planning on going anywhere?
Yeah, we are, and if you add them all up, they add up to 29,000. It's just the way we separate it out in terms of registration. We believe registration will go up, ground transportation may not be as much as we look at it, and...
Well, it's a big drop. I just wondered because,
But,
you've got...
yeah, the
ground
bottom line.
transportation involves gas, and that's not going to go down. And then you've got, the other thing down here, because if you look at the total operation units, right here, almost to the end of the page, you have 31,570. And you have nothing in there for, right here, yeah.
Department of Energy?
Yeah, energy, Renner Department of
Yes,
Energy.
that was the ARA grant that funded our grants and sustainability coordinator.
And also, yeah.
Yeah, and that has ended.
Okay.
That
so
also
that's why it's
included the
okay.
lighting project
All right.
that took place at the parks where we upgraded our lighting to
Yeah.
more efficient LED lights. I think that was all rolled into one.
Yeah, and then the only other one I think I had was back in the back pages.
That's going to be on building and neighborhood services.
Yeah.
That-
Oh, okay,
that'll
that's
be our
going to...
next-
Yeah,
Okay.
those two departments
We're
are
good.
putting this
Right,
back.
right.
All right, I just wanted, thanks.
Any other questions?
So where did that move for the sustainability person?
That's now fully covered by our budget.
Yeah, we sort of phased it, we used that, stepped it down over the last 3 years or 2 years, and now that grant is no longer present. It's just part of the budget.
Good deal.
Yeah.
I guess you could email us your presentation, because that's not in.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get all the
Yeah, we'll-
PowerPoints
we'll-
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then the second part of that will be building and neighborhood services.
Drum roll. Chris at the helm.
Chris, the new guy gets to do this, yeah.
Our interim director, Chris Bridgewater, maybe I should say.
Sharon Morris-Bailey to come up with me today. If you haven't met her, she is our building associate. I've got Doug Warnick with us also, and Shannon McCoy. I guess basically I'd like to budget notes. The biggest part of the change in the budget that I have has to do with vehicles. Basically, what I would like to do, I have identified a way to do over the next 8 years to realize up to $150,000 in fuel cost savings. We've got 7 vehicles right now that are due for replacement if we follow our recommendation to replace them in 8 years or 100,000 miles. What I have proposed to do is not necessarily replace all 7 at once, but when I did these calculations, I came up with the idea that over the next 8 years, we're almost certain to replace all of them. So I figured out a plan over the next 8 years that would be the most economical. And it turns out that by replacing them, evenly over the next 8 years, all of them, all 18 of them, is also really close to being the most cost effective. And if I do this with vehicles that are very fuel efficient, the cost savings are going to be $150,000 over just buying new trucks in a kind of more or less random manner, just whenever we put them in the budget.
So specifically, you're talking about replacing what is largely sort of pickup trucks
Gas guzzler.
with a more fuel-efficient SUV type of vehicle, as well as you're talking about mixing in some other
That is correct.
vehicles too.
The primary vehicle that I've identified as a replacement is an Equinox, and it has a pretty high road clearance for our inspectors. But I've also identified that we can purchase leafs, all-electric vehicles, and still save the city a lot of money in fuel costs.
I saw that on there, and are they more expensive or less? I mean, are they big enough? I mean, you know, because they're not,
For
Say one
the,
person.
we would have, you know, primarily for our inspectors and for most office personnel, the Equinoxes are going to be, you know, able to handle when we have, you know, several personnel going out all at once. But for the most part, we have, you know, they go out in ones or twos. The Leaf specifically would be used by office personnel for the first couple of years. The inspectors, they kind of need that high clearance vehicle. You know, we'll test it out and see if they could possibly use one of the electrical vehicles, because that's where the most cost savings would be realized, is if an inspector could use one. But they often run into situations where they need to hop a curb or to go down a gravel road that has, you know, obstacles to it. And, you know, they don't need four-wheel drives, but they do need to negotiate, you know, gravel and potholes and things of that nature. The idea is, currently, this calendar year, we are spending $24,000 on fuel. That price will go up, I estimate, to $28,000 this year if we use all trucks. Over the next 8 years, it will go up to approximately $38,000 a year if gas prices trend upwards by just a simple 20 cents a year, if we just use a straight line approximation. So basically, we'll take the fuel economy and go from, you know, 12 to 13 miles per gallon and take it over the average of our fleet, get it to somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 miles per gallon. And we'll take the cost from $28,000, and in 8 years, my goal is to get it to $9,200 at an average fuel cost to us of $4.48 per gallon.
What was that? How many?
If fuel goes up to $4.48 a gallon, my goal is to get our fleet fuel cost down below $10,000 by purchasing these vehicles. And the key is to do it, you know, if we wait, the longer we wait, the more the gas is going to hurt us over time. So I would like to, you know, and not only that, but I think a good stable figure from year to year where, you know, we just purchase the same number of vehicles each year helps planning our finances. I pretty much already talked about the items on that slide.
So, but your total fleet, you've got about 18 vehicles. How many would be in the SUV category, and how many would be the all-electric vehicle potentially?
The first year, I would like to purchase two of the Equinox vehicles and one Leaf. The second year, again, two of the Equinoxes and one Leaf. I don't want to plan any further because we don't really know how the Leaf is going to do. You know, we have a good idea, you know, since Russ drives one. But we want to see how it does with our usage and see how it does. And I think, you know, regardless, we'll be able to use those two vehicles, you know, effectively. Over the next 8 years, we will replace 2 more vehicles each year until all the vehicles are the equivalent of the Equinox. They fall within a certain fuel efficiency range and they have a high road clearance.
Replace 2 vehicles a year?
yeah.
3 vehicles a year for the first 2 years,
Yeah,
and then
2.
2
Okay.
thereafter.
So you're saying that possibly the pickups would be gone and all replaced by SUVs?
Yes. Yeah, we would be replacing all the pickups. The pickups, the utility with the pickup was that it had the high clearance, but they're also just horrible with gas mileage. No
Well,
matter,
I'm sure, I'm very sure.
you know, even though the manufacturers have been raising the fuel efficiency, they've gone from 15 to 17 to 19 to 22.
Right.
Our inspectors are stuck on that 12.4 miles per gallon figure due to their patterns of usage in
Absolutely,
traffic.
yeah.
And the sport utility vehicle, when I did my calculations, you know, I didn't use the full advertised price. I backed it off to 26 miles per gallon as opposed to 32, which they publish. to try to get a more realistic, conservative figure for these.
Well, now, is that around town?
Yes. Yes, each inspector goes out in the morning and they...
No, I mean, the 26 or the 32 is around town?
Yes, around town.
Okay.
I did some research on various websites and did practical testing. And
Yeah.
At least a different deal.
I get about 100 miles.
well, the websites that do practical testing on these vehicles, they seem to agree that in the 24 to 26 mile per gallon range, that's what the Equinox is going to perform with, in city-type traffic.
That's not a mix, because there's a lot of difference to me, if I'm on the road and in town, there's a lot of difference than if I'm just mainly in town.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
this would be just
So they-
city limits.
No, I mean, stop and go, basically.
yeah.
Basically, stop and go. Yeah.
Look, you're like, I got you, okay. Mine are random questions, because I don't understand all this, but where are you gonna plug it in? We only have 2 plugs in the parking garage.
Well, the leaves for office use, our typical pattern is they might use 20 to 25 miles. They don't do a full loop like the inspectors. So they could technically go a whole week on one charge. We do have the chargers in the garage. They come with a plug-in charger which can completely charge it within 24 hours. So we don't necessarily have to buy chargers for these things the first year. We can kind of see our operational pattern, see what's needed, and utilize chargers that we already have.
And clarify the difference between office personnel.
Thank you.
Because I'm like, well, I want a job in your office if I get a car. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, we've got 2 basic categories of usage. We've got 9 inspector categories. Those guys do approximately 10,000 miles per year when they go out and do their inspections. They go out in the morning, they circle the city all day long. Then we have...
And what do they do?
As they go out and do construction inspections. They've got a list of inspections they have to accomplish, and they...
These are people actually going out doing inspections, you're telling me?
Yes, correct.
So I didn't hear
That's
that.
their
Okay.
primary job description, is to go from construction site to construction
And you're
site.
saying each of them go about 9,000 a year?
10,300 on
10,000?
average per vehicle.
What was the 9 you gave us? Nine people.
9 people.
Yeah, 9.
Okay.
We have 9
I'm sorry,
potential...
I had 9 written down, I
vehicles
thought, what is
for
that? Okay, 9, okay.
The other 9 are used for our office personnel, which are our plans examiners. We've got, a plan comes in, they want to go take a look at the building site, they want to go look at the existing building to see what's on the site, or the zoning personnel, or our signs administrator, or our 3 neighborhood resource coordinators. They don't drive continuously like the inspectors do, and their average mileage, it kind of varies between 3,000 and 6,000, but the average is 3,700 apiece.
And we have a vehicle for each of those people?
Thank you for asking
Not for each
that.
of those people. There's some that are pool
shared.
vehicles. Like the plans examiners use one vehicle. Our signs administrator, he has a lot more usage. He needs a dedicated vehicle. The
Yeah.
neighborhood resources coordinators, they need to, go in and out of the office all day. They don't necessarily drive a lot, but they might go make 4 visits, 4 or 5 out-of-office trips. Zoning has one vehicle.
You have
Our
about
building official
28
has a
staff
vehicle.
people total.
And 18
in
cars?
18 vehicles. And a lot of the work obviously is out in the field with either construction sites or at locations
We just
to do
go
the
and
work.
take a
So
look.
they're all pool vehicles, although some are so heavily out and about that they probably are in the same vehicle most every day.
That's
But
correct.
Are these
they're
vehicles
all
they take
shared.
home with them, or they parked?
They're parked.
Nobody
Every
takes them
single
home
one of them's
in
parked.
this
That helps.
department.
Yeah, it does. Well,
They're their take-homes.
the sign administrator, now, in my book, he'd be out a lot.
He's out pretty much
So
every day.
wouldn't he be a good person to drive the Leaf?
Yes, and that's actually who I
Because there's
talked
where you
with
want to
also.
say, I don't really care about these people that drive 10 miles here and 10 miles there. I care about the person out there that's driving consistently every day, and then you can come back and you can plug it in at night, and then come back in the morning, and you've got 12 hours of good charge and
The
every
sign
venue.
administrator definitely has more usage than everybody, than
Yeah, I
most
think
of the
that's where
office
we'd
staff.
save our money. If we're going to actually buy a Leaf, let's give it to somebody like that that would save us that fuel. Yeah.
As pool vehicles, you'll assign them to the folks that
Highest
best
need.
matches
Yeah, highest
that
and
kind of
best
use
use.
as best you can.
Right, because you don't want somebody coming back to the office just to plug the car in because they can't get to the next place.
No, and they're only going to be in town. I mean, they're going to go out and regulate the county, they're regulating the city.
That's correct.
So that 70 miles per use, per day, per charge should do it.
Yeah, it should be well able to meet our needs.
Yeah, I would think so, okay.
So how much do you calculate this will add to your budget request this
How
year?
much you trying to say?
That, the amount for vehicles is 77,000.
What was that again?
The amount for vehicles is an additional 77,000. 40,000 for the two Equinoxes, and then 37,600 for the Leaf. But we are pursuing
So
some
the Leaf would
savings.
cost as much as
That's
two SUVs?
Yes. But, we're
Well,
pursuing some cost
that's not
savings.
entirely true. They're still almost $10,000 in either state or federal rebates
Yeah.
if you do a lease.
Do we qualify
If you
for,
do a,
Well, we wouldn't qualify for a purchase, but we would for a lease.
If you did it under a lease. you
Under a
would
lease
get
program?
back some of that rebate.
And what, we've debated that many times before, what comes out to be the best scenario, the lease or the purchase.
And we're
So we will do that again.
very much looking at some options related to that here.
Yeah.
This group and this program Chris is describing is a good candidate to look at
The lease
some kind
option.
of lease arrangement
Yeah.
as well. So we're gonna be considering
Well,
that as we think about
we'll
this.
be measuring that up against the purchase price and everything, yeah, right.
I wonder if Nissan would be receptive to Nissan North America having a, hey, they could put Nissan North America, Franklin, Tennessee on it as far,
Franklin.
Well, if you bought a
or a nice
numerous
demo
leafs,
of a
Yeah.
local government agency.
if you bought numerous leafs at one time, we would think so.
Well, there are a lot of
Would we get
cities
the-
across the country that perform the same service. And
Would
it'd
we
be a
get-
great way to demonstrate the use of that vehicle in the field.
Would we get family and friends pricing? I mean, I'm serious.
well, let us
They
also
have
say,
that pricing.
I know we looked at one time at some of our police vehicles being that, and we wound up buying, I think, a used vehicle instead of new, and it was at least less than half the price. I'm not saying that this is appropriate here.
It's a little different type of use, but yeah,
But there was a big difference in the price there, and, I mean, I don't know whether Leafs are coming off lease or anything like that. I'm just saying, just to try something, because obviously we're gonna be trying this, but whenever you told me it cost as much as two of those SUVs, I, kinda cringed there. I mean, truly, and I understand the idea about the electric, and everything, but still.
Well, I did want to present you the $27,000 figure, which is a lot closer, without having
But that's a
firm
lease,
grasp on
yeah.
whether we can do it, but that's the savings that we will, pursue.
And so how much fuel savings would that be for that particular vehicle for that year? I mean, I'm not going to ask you at the top of your head, but that's what I'm asking.
Well, the Leaf, is calculated 100 miles per gallon at our current gas prices, and that's just a comparative figure only. The electric,
Kitchen.
electricity's not going to go up like gas. So
Yeah.
as a comparison, I can't really tell you, how it does compared to those other things, and especially since we're talking about somebody who's going to only drive 5,000 or 6,000 miles as opposed to the 10,000 miles of the inspector vehicle. There's a lot more savings to be had there just because they drive more.
Yeah.
But
It'd be interesting to see.
I can get you
I
that
mean,
figure,
really,
how much,
I'd like to see, because
how much
that,
a cost savings per vehicle it would be.
Very progressive of you to go down this path.
Yes.
but let me say
I agree.
this, though, for something that doesn't have to be high profile, you could buy something else that gets better gas mileage than I'm personally getting on my vehicle right now at a lot cheaper price.
Yes.
And I mean, in town. And so I guess that's the thing that might be looked at too. If you don't have to have the high profile. You don't have to have the not high profile,
High
but
clearance.
high clearance.
Yeah.
If you don't have to have the high clearance, then, we might be looking at some other things that are a
Certainly.
lot cheaper than this and a lot cheaper than an SUV.
Well, we were also looking at the Camry Hybrid, which is very similar
Yeah,
in the
that's a
savings
good
you would
one.
get, and
That's good savings.
it's 24,500 as opposed to the 19,000 of the Equinox. And it's supposed to get right around 43 miles per gallon on the highway.
I'm so there.
Wow. Okay, well, as I say, this is something to look at because it is something that I think.
Brandy,
And there are some
This
very,
is all gonna be interesting.
Brandy bought up, yeah, this great thing about
Rocky
Vespas.
Nazi has that little card thing, I mean.
Let's go
we're gonna be in
European.
town.
European, they
I'm
send their,
sorry,
they
Mark.
send their inspectors out on Vespas.
Yeah, but we found out we had charging problems when it got real cold.
I think
On a day
the
like today, they could drive the leak.
I think the takeaway is Chris has really done some work on this.
Yeah,
and
yes.
He's really trying to be progressive in looking at some of these expenses.
and there are some variations we'll continue to look
Yeah.
at, whether it's lease or the exact type of vehicle. And some of them, you have to try some opportunities here and see what matches our needs best.
That is the
And-
case,
And that's the
definitely.
beauty too of not trying to do them all at once, but to try to piece them in over time and see what works and matches with our needs. And they are, again, pool cars, so we can kind of mix and match the vehicle with the need.
True, very true.
Are we
What else do you
on
want?
this yet? Are you still?
Maybe do something, throw in a free charger.
Mike is really looking
Make
for
it
that. Get over there.
Authorize
Hey,
it.
Bobby.
Hey,
Authorize it.
as someone once told me, the people at the top need to make the big deals and don't go in and try to make small deals because then they won't do the big deal.
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
right, you're right.
You could be our lobbyist, so. Oh,
Okay, what next? Go ahead.
He's still trying to finish.
Well, our current inspection staffing, comparison, as to our busiest years, we have 3 building inspectors and 2 electrical inspectors currently, with 2 part-time inspectors helping out a few days a week. We currently have approximately 21,000 inspections per year. That's where we're at. Right now, the rate of increase appears to be right at 20% is what I estimate for the year, how much more inspections we're going to do over the next year. We did have 7 building inspectors and 4 electricals at our peak.
And we're doing basically twice the number of
They were doing twice the number of
We're
inspections.
stepping up
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
So our staffing has
Getting busier.
dropped
Yeah.
commensurate. Well, we move people
Yeah.
around doing different things,
Yeah,
but
it's a good thing.
we don't have as many out on the road doing inspections.
well, didn't quite drop down half,
Well, it's going to pick back up, hopefully.
did it, or did it?
All right.
Well, the
Yeah, it
staffing
did,
is
it did,
Yeah.
okay,
a little better.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
One of the, I guess we could get to staffing. One of the things, instead of asking for additional positions to meet these increases in inspections, what I would like to do is to have an in-place promotion, in-place change in grade for our inspectors. And we would be asking them to obtain more certifications that would allow them to do different types of inspections to meet the peak demand loads, because we've got a group of inspectors who can do electrical and a group that can do building. And some days we have an awful lot of electrical and a little bit of building. It varies from day to day, but I would like to ask these inspectors to obtain different certifications so they can do any of these inspections. And instead of hiring more, to meet the peak loads, we could just shift them from inspection to inspection as we needed to.
But we haven't done that before, everybody's kind of been an expert in their field.
In their fields, they could do a limited amount of inspections by state law. They could do, there is a state law that tells us you have to have certain certifications for building, plumbing, mechanical, or
Right,
electrical.
right.
You have to do those, you have to have a certification. So that's a piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is, let me go back to, or add, subtract, is that in order to not ask for additional personnel as these inspection load increases, what I'll want to do is have more money for training. And not only training for the inspectors to get these additional certifications, but previously we have never had training for our other staff, our permit techs, our neighborhood resources coordinators, and just the minimum necessary for our zoning personnel to meet what continuing education requirements they had. But I'm gonna open up that training and memberships in organizations and regional travel to attend conferences so that they become technically better to do their jobs, and they'll be more able to handle their workloads. And that's primarily the focus of the increases I've asked for in the budget. $7,000 for fuel's going up. Certification testing, just to get the certifications, we've got to ask for more money for them to take the tests. I've asked for, we've got several computers coming up for replacement. Also, we're looking at reconfiguring the office to have all our plans examiners in one area, and the $5,000 there would cover the cubicle expenses and any incidental furniture costs to shift around those partitions. And that's basically what I'm asking for in the next budget.
What about fuel hedging? You're talking about.
Got to keep doing it.
Yeah. You're talking about the price of gas going up, so how does that relate to our fuel hedging prices?
Well, we handle that right now through general expense, and we'll be talking about that next month, but I mean, it's our plan to continue to do it as long as it is prudent to do it. I mean, if the price gets high enough, we would probably refrain to some extent, because there are swings in energy that go up and down. I think Chris got the number of 20 cents a year from me because we went
Yes.
back and did a plot over 30 years, and really in the last 15 or 20, it's been about 20 cents per gallon each year if you take out the swings.
All right. I was just wondering if you
We're
can.
trying to protect ourselves from the swings, but not from the long run effects.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah,
have
you
to still
can't-
plan to be more efficient and be more efficient with having fuel-efficient vehicles, and also
Yeah, exactly.
optimizing our trips in terms of trying to.
Right. I just want to make sure
eliminate
y'all were communicating with that for your.
Yes, I got the fuel figures from Russ.
Yeah, I was
We're
going to
using the
say,
figures
what
with
were
the
you
hedges
doing in
involved.
that?
Not-
So make
not
sure
the
you're
actual
communicating
price.
on that for your projections.
Yeah, and
That's all.
finance shares that across the whole organization in terms of estimated
All right, so they're
costs,
working-
and so that
okay.
should be integrated in
I just make
everything you
sure.
see
Fuel costs.
in fuels, fuel
Yeah.
line items across
I would
budgets,
think
that's
that would have to be,
consistent.
yeah.
Well, Chris, another thing that, as you have these inspectors certified in other areas, won't that reduce trips that somebody else would have to come from the office
Most
to the
definitely.
same place?
Because, for example, for an air conditioner changeout, there is an electrical inspection and a mechanical inspection. And it takes two people to do that.
Oh,
And,
yeah, there you go.
were we able to have the combination? We have one combination inspector currently. Well, most of our plans examiners, I would say, are already combination inspectors. But the actual action level personnel, we have one combination inspector, and it's really convenient because he can go out and tackle 2 inspections in one trip on air conditioner changeouts and water heater changeouts and similar things where you need normally we need 2 inspectors to take care of it.
That sounds really good. It seems to me, though, as I remember, some of these things are really technical. I mean, I'm thinking about the electrical inspector because I remember when we were building a house, how that person came in, and took a lot of time and was very, very particular about everything. Is it the case that a lot of people would be able to handle, and have the expertise in several of these fields? I don't know. I mean, that's what
Yes, actually. And what we're talking about is, of course, there's going to be a place for the Rand Edwards and the Norm O'Neill, who has 20, 30 years in their trade. They've done all electrical all their lives, and they can also do building, plumbing, mechanical, but they can tackle they do tackle every electrical inspection thing you throw at them, from the complicated corporate centers down to the residential level. But there's also lots of inspections out there that are simpler, and all our inspectors start with a construction background. They start knowing how to construct a house. They know they know basic wiring. They know what it looks like, and it's not that far a stretch for them to tackle the 80% of the inspections which fall within the normal range, which are not terribly complicated. They're new houses where you see the same thing over and over and over, and they could handle those things. And then the 20%, or, I'm pulling these kind of numbers out of the air, but it's some proportion that are truly complicated and technical. We still retain the capability with our primarily electrically oriented inspectors to handle those. And the same for the building, plumbing, and mechanical, where the really complicated structural issues, the exiting and egress of our, the biggest buildings, how it all fits into fire safety, all those items. We still have people who are better in those areas.
More
Yes.
expert, if you want to say that, yeah.
But,
Yeah. I just wondered about that and just what you call a building inspector as opposed to plumbing, mechanical, electrical. Would that person be a kind of a jack of all trades too, or is that just construction?
well, our building inspectors, right now they're doing building, plumbing, and mechanical.
Okay.
They've expanded, they start off as building, and we've asked them to expand into plumbing and mechanical.
Okay. Okay. What about some other questions about that particular part of it? And then do you have more, or are we ready to go to other specific questions?
What's the deal on page 2 of the budget spreadsheet? Again, are we planning on going up really high with these total notices and subscriptions and publicity? Because you've gone from 10,000 up to 20,000, increased to 100%. That's right there under 82,390. 82390, XNSP, page 2.
I think that's carried over.
Publication, non-training, okay.
And that's the testing and the,
Well, that particular piece was, we are putting, all our inspectors are, they have the notebooks that will communicate wirelessly with our network. That number is to buy electronic versions of the code books that will go on their laptops.
Well, that comes under notice, subscriptions, and publicity?
Well, it comes under...
that's a general category that includes all publications and,
Oh, I see, standard
Non-training.
accreditation.
and the testing as
Testing
well,
and
it
training.
appears, that your
Testing
testing
and
is part of
training.
that
Oh, yeah.
larger group.
Oh, I see it, it's 9,000.
But
It was so
that-
dark, I couldn't see that one. Sorry about that. I see it. I see where it is.
But that's what that is, and that
Okay.
is to have their code books with them in the truck, and that gets us 10 electronic
Yeah,
copies.
exactly. And then the contractual services, we're going from 23,000 down to 8,000?
Basically,
82599?
yes, we had a figure in there, $15,000 in case we needed to demolish a house.
Oh,
Basically, we don't know when we're going to need that money, so we talked about, instead of budgeting each year, we're going to have, place it in some sort of emergency or contingency type fund.
Because we don't tear out a house every
We
day.
don't know when we're
Don't
going to
Not
do
even
that.
every other.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of building multiple contingencies and
Yeah.
budgets. We might need this, sometimes this
Yeah.
happens. I'd rather we have more of a general contingency that we can use than a bunch of little
Right.
pockets of contingencies within budgets, so this
They're
is
always-
kind of consistent with.
Yeah, okay. Good idea.
On the, I think we're still on page 1 there, the regular pay, the increase there would be for, are you saying, kind of promoting people to another grade? Is that it? Or is that just the 2%? I'm looking at just on page 1, the very first
yeah. and
line there.
Regular pay.
Overtime?
No,
No.
just on
Just
regular
the
pay.
general wage.
Regular
But
pay,
it's-
nothing here.
No, no,
1271 to 1327.
yeah, that's right.
Some
Yeah,
of
right
that,
there.
yes, some of that money
That's-
is from the
that says
promotions. I couldn't tell you how
Oh,
much it came from the promotions. It would be 7 total promotions, 1 pay grade each. I would actually say that one pay grade is going to be in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $5,000 additionally for where they are.
Yeah.
That's probably a good estimation of what it would take to promote those 7 personnel.
So is the reason, I'm saying the reason for that, but thinking about all of our other employees would not necessarily be getting a pay grade raise. They would just be getting across the board. So, and say again specifically why you think all of your people get the extra money.
Sure.
That's the promotion.
Well, for these 7, I would also be asking them, I would be asking them to obtain additional certifications. For that second grade, they would have to have a total of the 6 that they currently have, plus 2 plans examiner certifications and a residential energy inspection certification. So I'm going to ask them to go back to school and become much more useful in their current job description than what they currently are. They would be able to back up the plans examiners. They would also be able to conduct residential plan reviews as they are out in the field. And that's one of the certifications I would ask them to do. As well as an energy inspection certification, which is, we've had the Energy Conservation Code on the books since 2003, but it's gotten a lot more complicated in the recent years. So we're going to need additional training. I'm going to ask them to go through the certification so that they will know exactly how to make those calls, those expensive calls that the contractors don't necessarily understand currently. I want them to be able to do it correctly. And this is the incentive to get them there, is that additional job description we would promote them into if they meet those standards.
I'll just add one thing that's more across the organization. This is something we're taking a look at because we have some inconsistencies in various positions on how we treat certifications or licenses. And I'll just tell you overall, we're looking at that. There are places where we provide sort of a payment that doesn't move you up a pay grade, but gives you sort of a payment or a certification, almost, I don't want to say stipend, but something like that, that's a set amount that you get for achieving a certain certification. Say a firefighter that becomes a paramedic, they get a paramedic pay increment, or somebody who's serving as a field training officer, they get a certain chunk, additional dollars for doing that or what they're doing there. There's other cases where literally somebody moves up a pay grade when they reach a certain licensure or something like that. So what we did some other work a year or so ago where we collected some of that information. Now we're taking a look at how we do that and what's the most consistent way to treat that, those different steps, which ones are deserving of it and which ones do we want to treat in which ways, whether that's just a specific payment related to that certification, and as long as you have it and maintain it, you receive that, and which are ones that warrant a sort of a step change. Yeah, we create a sort of a career ladder of you move from a certain pay grade up to another because you got that license or you got a certain certification. So that's something we're trying to look at across the organization, and quite frankly, we're not real consistent in how that's treated. And there may be some good reasons for that, but we are taking a look at that, and some of the things Chris is talking about will probably fall in that category. But I think it's important that we look at how we encourage the development of skills that give us greater flexibility, better meet the needs that we're seeing now versus what maybe was going on a few years ago even. And so that gives us more flexibility as a team to respond to those needs. And the more, in this example, Chris could send one person out and they take care of lots of different needs. That really has a benefit to us and to our customer. And so that's the kind of thing that is important to think about, and then how we reward that within our employees is important too, so that we're encouraging this and developing the right skills within our team.
I could see the efficiency aspect of this. I was thinking, however, when you talked about the EMT and those things like that, I do not recall that they get $4,000 a year extra, do they?
A paramedic does.
Yeah, okay.
Paramedic, but not just a general EMT, but a paramedic, that additional skill is
that was what came to mind whenever you said that.
Yeah.
As I say, I can see some of the efficiencies there, because it certainly would be better to have one person at a site than have to get 3 or 4 people out there. But it's certainly something to look to, and I don't think we're thinking about $4,000 for everybody, you know.
Well, that number is kind of notional at this point because the job descriptions haven't been submitted to the consultant. I don't know. I just kind of placed them in a natural progression that might occur in order for for this discussion.
Because often the pay grades are based on supervisory responsibility too. If you go up a certain point and you're in charge of people.
That's
this
obviously
would be
not the
more-
only thing that happens here in Franklin, though. But I know what you're talking about. I've been privy to that too. That question about and what's the one that I had? And I think about, and yeah, I think you answered about the computer. Things, okay. Any other comments, questions about this? Okay. Thank you very much.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, let's see, and now, on item 6, will we start with engineering first, and then go?
That's all the same group, so bring them all up together.
Okay, now, I did not, the stormwater was not with them. Yeah, I mean, the stormwater information was not with them, or are you doing stormwater?
Yeah, I'm going
too?
to do the engineering portion of stormwater.
There's two,
Okay,
there's an
okay.
engineering and a streets portion
Well,
on
I didn't
stormwater.
see,
so.
I didn't see an engineering
Kevin, if you wanna
stormwater, but
come
go
on up to
ahead.
the end.
Come on.
Okay, so we're going to do
Crystal, too, come on up.
engineering and talk.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
Vicki, can we get the presentation? Should be on the F drive as well. Yes, it was number 6, I believe. Yes, Finance Committee, and then it was number 6.
His face went so good.
You're right. You're right. Where does that guy?
Vernon.
Didn't he just pass away?
Hey, Vernon, did Wisconsin win? Okay, that's why Vernon's happy.
Number 6.
What other scores do you have for us?
Sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Can I use this?
Cheesehead.
Yay.
Sets up the Vanderbilt-Wisconsin
Six,
match.
the
That's
president.
what Vernon's looking forward
Cheesehead?
to. It'll be the Russ versus Vernon.
That's true.
Yes, that's correct.
And I
Okay,
know
then.
Murray State won. I'm trying to think who else.
You don't know? Okay. Well,
Kansas State won.
I'll just say we want to change.
Marquette won.
Sorry about that.
30 minutes.
Oh, yes, my husband's glued.
Okay, well, let's finish this up
Let's
so
go
we
out
can
there
see.
during the lab.
That's right.
And the,
That was just a
and the
break.
update for the ball games.
that, Paul. I needed to.
My husband said,
Paul, go ahead. Goodness.
don't ask me to do anything, I'll be at the TV.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present the engineering budget. If we can go to the next slide. I'm just going to run through personnel and then run through other few slides and basically highlight the major increase changes associated with our budgets. As far as personnel goes, in this upcoming year, we're asking for a new position to be created called the Assistant Director of Engineering. Currently, Dan Allen serving as the Interim Assistant Director. We're not asking for an additional employee, just a new position to be created, and from within we'll promote. In addition, we have 2 engineers that are Engineer 1s that are prepared to take their professional engineering test. If they pass, we would reclassify them as Engineer 2s. The one new position that we are asking for is a TOC operator. Essentially, with all the infrastructure that we're putting in with the Traffic Operations Center, all the fiber, all the ITS system, we've basically gone from 4 to 20 cameras, 4 miles of fiber to 13 and a half miles of fiber. It's creating more maintenance, additional work. So we're asking for a traffic TOC operator to assist with daily duties. On to the engineering operations. The approved budget for last year was around $75,000. This upcoming budget year, we're asking for $99,375. I'm going to highlight the major increases. Everything else should remain generally the same. We're asking for an additional $5,000 essentially to outsource scanning. Right now, we have around 19 boxes of plans out in the garage that whenever someone does a public records request or we need information associated with a project, we have to dig through a database, go out to the parking garage and search through them. We've been trying for years to scan this stuff in. We've looked at some numbers. We can outsource this much cheaper than we can actually do it in-house and then incorporate this into our electronic filing system. In addition, we're asking for about $1,000 to purchase high-visibility construction jackets. We're always going on site in the middle of the winter. We want no excuse for our employees to be wearing high-visibility jackets. As far as machinery and equipment go, we have a copy machine that's 7 years old. It breaks down weekly. I've been told that after 7 years, they stop making parts and it becomes much more expensive to do. So we really need to look at replacing this machine. In addition, a lot of the plan review is going to digital. We'd like to budget $6,000 to purchase larger, high-res type screens that, as the plans go away, it makes it easier to review plans.
Quick question, are you going to give the planning commissioners the same thing so we can look at them?
Upgrade. Put that in
Go
the
ahead.
Alderman budget and the commissioner budget.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Resist that.
It's a very good point.
That is a good
It is a very good point. And in addition, we have 3 computers that need to be replaced this year, and actually one of the laptops, we're looking at just trying to change out a battery to keep the cost down. Those are the major operation changes within the engineering budget. As far as capital goes, I want to apologize because I, for some reason, did not get it into the forecaster, but I would like to budget for capital